There you go, Mr. Fleabag. George is on the table. He seems to be, wherever I go, he wants to be about. Now he's going to go sit underneath there. I know it freaks out the birds when they see him hiding, because I've got all sorts of wild birds living here. He's probably going to go back in, or he's going to go back to his bench. He does like that bench. Sometimes he's under it. Today it's an under day, too warm for him. So yeah, welcome to today's short episode. This is the bank holiday weekend or long weekend of the King's coronation in England, and the King now has his crown, which he waited 70 years for. From a waiting point of view, I couldn't wait anymore. Today's turned reasonably okay. This morning it was still raining and wet and miserable, but through the afternoon it got better, and I've got one small job done. If you remember, the engine mount was torn off behind the front chassis member, and basically that needed repairing and replacing, which I've now made a plate for. You'll see there's a bit of a story around it. I've done all of that, and it's another step in the right direction with this little Canta build. Thanks for joining. By all means, please click the like button, write up in the comments if you've got something to say, questions to answer or ask, and subscribe if you should feel that way. Thanks a lot, and welcome to the show. So, as a recap, let's have a quick look. You can see everything is out of line here, the bonnet, etc., because the engine, in bouncing up, was actually hitting one of the mounts onto which the bonnet or hood is mounted and hinges forward. But these are all things that will get sorted. So today's little job is quite small. It's just about getting this off, cleaned up and ready to weld. If you put a jack in underneath here, you can lift the engine up and actually push it back to where it belongs, which is where that mount should be welded onto. So if I can get the brace welded onto the mount, then bolt the mount back together again, put the jack in underneath, raise the whole lot and have it square, it should be an easy job just welding upside down on the bottom and also on the rear. That shouldn't be that difficult. It'll probably be a MIG job, I suspect. That's probably the easiest way to get in there is with MIG, and then that should be a whole big step forward. After that it'll be things like servicing the belts, making sure that the CVT is all working properly. Also, I'll then start it again for the first time in a few days, or weeks actually, and see whether everything is secure, whether the actual mounts up here are all secure, and whether the bonnet has stopped shaking, rattling and rolling. So that's today's little job. It shouldn't take too long. The cleaning up will take a little bit longer because it always takes a while to clean up properly and prepare. And then we'll get back to who knows what. I think on the inside I might start looking at things like the ignition barrel to try and get that out and get it sorted. So, you know, as I say, welcome to the show. We will see what we can get recorded today. I'm not sure how much work I'll get done, but as long as it doesn't rain, I'll keep busy, get stuff done, and yeah, progress, I guess. So welcome to England on a very, very, very grey weekend. That's my high-tech filming prop up there. I'll also just show you the weather. As you can see, dull and grey, and with spring coming, everything is growing like mad again. So very soon it'll be half the weekend spent cleaning up the garden, tidying up hedges and stuff like that, and the rest of the time obviously spent on hobbies, playing around and trying to get this Canta going. So yeah, back in a minute. Right, number 17. We'll use one of each, little flat ring and a quick socket. Let's see if we can undo this. It won't be that difficult. There you go. Not very tight at all. Everything else comes unstuck like this, that'll be a good thing. Right. Keep that together. Keep that together. And it's as easy as that. Comes off, all of it. I'll just keep it all together so that I don't lose any bits. Because that's one thing you don't need, is to lose parts, do you? Right, so what does this look like? The next step will be just to clean this up, grind away all that muck, get a nice bit of angle iron to replace the mounting point welded onto that. So looking at this again, closer and more slowly, you can see that, call it gold if you want, this yellowy gold metal plate that's folded is tucked under the base of the engine, comes down and then forward. It is welded to this little T-shaped plate that actually you have the front engine mount mounted to. If you look again toward the rear, you follow that plate up to the rear, you will find that that crossbar that you see there is mounted to the rear mounts. This, I can't get that filmed in very tight there, but it has been welded before, so that crossbar is actually welded to this plate which is under the engine and actually keeps the engine and the little CVT gearbox together. So there's more to it than what I thought. Not that it's a biggie, it just means that this is one solid unit, and it probably is a bit stronger than I anticipated it to be. But yeah, that's basically it. That's out. Time to clean this thing up. Next job. See you back in a minute. So there I was thinking, quick grind and a weld and it's fixed. Turns out this thing is quite bent. So it's going to take a bit more disassembling, and then hopefully the BFH, once the BFH has been added, hopefully if it's square and straight, reassemble the whole lot, and then once that's done, weld on a bit of angle iron on the front to be a replacement support and also to spread the load. But that's quite interesting. So this is obviously partly the abuse that it's taken. I suspect this thing has done some pretty strange and crazy things in its life, but it's alright, we can fix this. So yeah, next step, disassemble, straighten out that bottom plate, clean it up, weld it back together, done. I hope. We might find more flaws and faults. There you go. Right, let's see. Get going on this quickly. Undo these two. See if I can get this plate out on its own. It shouldn't be too much of a problem. He said famously. We have nylock nuts both ends. Sometimes it's easier just doing things like that rather than the old style, but let's see. Right. That should be undone. Fingers crossed that this one comes together very quickly and easily. We will leave these little guys here for the moment. And then we've got the plate off with its impressive bend, and I'll put these guys back on because that's so much easier to find them rather than dig around in the chaos. There's this little welding table of mine, one of those useful tools that I've had for years, comes and goes. Right, so the first trick is to straighten that out. You can see significantly bent, which it obviously shouldn't be, and the weakness would have been where the thinner metal sits. So I suspect the camera is going to bounce like hell now when I start smashing, but fingers crossed everything stays as it should. Straight, straight, tidy. Right, so that's part one. Part two is grinding all this crap off. Safety glasses on. I'm just wondering. Yes, because we're adding more metal onto the chassis, this will have to drop. So that weld, where it originally was, you probably have to lose 2 mil or 3 mil just to drop it lower down. When it's re-welded, then you still have the same depth or same height, if you want to call it that. This does look so ever so slightly still squiff. I'm just going to give it one little tight bang. That'll just feed my OCD. Tie this down as square as possible. And quickly get onto the small grinder. I think some people call it a zip disc, some people call it a cutting disc. Just actually go straight in and cut this off. I think that is the answer.
And actually, you can see, if you just find something that's not going to burn my fingers now, when you look at where the weld was, you can actually see that metal stopped over there. So, just the right thing to do. Move this out the way a little bit. And that should take us back to square one, hopefully. I think quick touch with used flat disc. Flat discs are really useful. I also have a couple other various files, but this should do the thing. And you can see that side is good. Just need to tidy up that side, get all the old weld out, and hopefully that'll be good. Now, the trick is to get this in a position where you can still work on it without flying off anywhere. Just flip it, get the other side done, and it should be good.
Tidy, ready for the weld. I've also made a very slight bevel so you can get better penetration and hopefully a better grip when it comes to re-welding. Put these back together for the moment until I have, well, not together, I'll just leave them here, but leave them together until I found myself a bit of angle iron to also add to the strengthening. So there you go, back in a bit. There's a lot of bits in this movie today. Right, so on to plan B. Plan A was angle iron. Plan B is actually just some flat bar. I found a nice bit at the back there. This is hot rolled steel apparently, and it's 30mm by, looks like 4mm. So 4mm thick, 30mm wide, and that's actually the same width as the bottom of that chassis frame on the front. Where it broke off at the rear toward the engine actually is enough of a space that you can just fill it in with a bit of weld. So I've measured, I'm going to cut it, tidy it up, cut it off, and then we'll take it from there. That should be good enough. Weld that onto the actual engine mount plate, and then once I have a MIG welder on site, I can weld the front and fill the rear of the chassis. So there we go. You can hear it's a Sunday out here. Everyone's got their lawnmowers going, which is kind of nice, I guess you could say. So yeah, cut down to size.
Give myself some more space to work. That should be good. Let's do the top surface quickly and that's tidy and ready. Clean, tidy, ready for welding, I guess. Maybe worth cleaning the other edges as well. Let's do a little bit of that.
I think that's ready. That should be good. Weld it together and we're on our way. Right, so the next step is to just see if these match up. I've used a clamp just to clamp the metal in place, the replacement piece. The mount piece that needs to be welded to that is up there, and these clamps are really useful. It's a simple trick that I never use enough, and if any one of you follow Rat Rods for Africa, that's Rat Rods for Africa, Diff, who's the rat rod builder on there, uses all sorts of clever third hand and fourth hand tools that help him hold things in place, position things, direct kind of the energy that he needs to, etc. And this is one of his tricks, is using tons of clamps. So let's see what happens if we lift this up. Just make sure this is closed. Yep. And then we'll stick it under the engine and just make sure that we have this thing in the right position and that it will all marry up. There you go. You can see the engine mount plate lifting, about to join the... There you go. And that is probably going to be spot on where we need to weld this. So excuse my very cack-handed way of managing my camera, but you can see the flat plate will be welded onto the chassis first. In fact, I'm talking rubbish. It's going to be welded, these two are going to be welded together, and then that will be joined in there once this is bolted back in position, because everything is now squared up, as you can see. It's all lined up. Put a weld in on that side, take it off, weld the back of it, and then once that's all together, clean up, take the paint off, prepare it, run a weld down there, weld down each end, and also tuck in behind to do a bit more of a weld there. That should see the engine mounts all in position, because the other two, as I mentioned, have been welded before already. So yeah, coming together once again, small steps, and I think every time we do a small job, we're closer to this thing actually running properly by itself.